think that that's the biggest reason that, even the people who are, quote, Republicans or consider themselves Republicans in the state won't vote for a very conservative Democrat because of that R or D next to their name, and they just think that, to the Republicans it's a little bit easier because they have a harder time getting into office. So they can say, hey, look, I knew all along my guy wasn't going to win, so I'm going to cast my vote for him anyway because I'm voting against the other guy. And I think that has a lot to do with it is the idea that, people don't vote necessarily for the candidate that they like best. They vote against the candidate that they like least. But I think Dawson Hodgson is more left than a lot of the Democrats that we have. Mm-hmm. Your rep being a perfect example of that. Certainly left of a lot of these kind of Tea Party philosophies, and I think he spearheaded in the Senate, the same-sex marriage debate.
Is Hodgson running as a Republican?
Yes.
Yeah.
And he's so far running unopposed.
If there isn't a third-party candidate, if the Democrats scrape somebody together and plop him out there, Hodgson, I think, has a better chance. If it's a two-person race, I think he's got a better chance.
Because
I think so as well.
If people listen closely to his platform and his message,
you're being given a clear choice. You can vote for a Democratic hack corporatist, or you can vote for someone who happens to have an R in his name, but
who has a lot of smart ideas and can articulate them.
A lot of integrity.
Doesn't live in Florida.
And stands pretty much, I would say, in lockstep, but on significant issues, sides with you. And here, what could be better than that?
Yeah, but I think that's a byproduct of the two-party system that we have in this country, where people get so they're so focused on that D or R after somebody's names that they're not really looking at the candidate.
Yeah,
I said this
of that on purpose.
A couple months back, I did this Ignite talk down in South County, which is basically kind of like a Pachaca TED talk kind of thing.
Right.
And I did the whole thing about my mayoral campaign and what I learned and what I did right and what I did wrong and one of the phrases that came up when I was writing the copy for this was, remember that you're not running against people. You're running against policies. Mm-hmm. And I think if we as Rhode Islanders took that more to heart, like looked more at policy than people or what they delineate themselves as, I think we would find ourselves voting in much more qualified and better representatives.
I mean, even though I disagree with you, I believe you to be correct, because the Cicilline campaign was a textbook example of running against an artificial bogeyman called the Republican Party, as opposed to focusing on an atrocious personal record, both as mayor and as a first-term congressman. I mean, it's just, he was, the folks running against Cicilline weren't running against Cicilline. They were running against Social Security reform and anything else that could be thrown up. And let me note, too, I mean, there's a side effect to all of this. You've had a president nationally who comes from the community organizer role, who portrays himself as an unabashedly liberal progressive Democrat, who gives lip service to wage equality and things like that, who has yet to successfully, I believe, prosecute anybody from the mortgage collapse.
And
yet...
And they don't seem to be interested in it.
Right, and they don't need congressional approval to do that. They control the Justice Department.
Right. So, why is Bernie Madoff in jail?
Because he stole from rich people.
Because he stole from rich people.
Right.
The Wall Street folks who basically tanked our entire economy and
really
stuck it to the middle class. Because, let's be honest, the top 10%, the top 5%, economic collapse or not, they're still doing okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's the middle class and the working poor in this country that the stock market and economic collapse has really raked them over the coals.
Right. And what's ironic, for example, take the General Motors situation. The General Motors bailout, which was touted as a pro-labor move, and actually organized labor ended up as a significant stakeholder in the new GM, actually, because of the way the bankruptcy was handled, essentially bankrupted hundreds of thousands of retirees who are former UAW line workers because the bonds that they represented, a significant part of their retirement investments, were taken from being at the top of the food chain to being rendered virtually worthless. And a lot of these people were forced to sell. So it's another example of the quote-unquote Democratic Party, of the corporatists, not the progressives, being allowed to act like the neocons did, for terms of the libertarians, act in an unfettered, unvarnished power grab to the detriment of the people that they purport to represent.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Yeah, well, I think
but where's the anger?
Well, part of the problem, I think, is that we have two parties fighting each other who both agree on the corporatist agenda. So they don't discuss that.
I
they don't
see
attack each other on that.
Little distinction between, well, nowadays it's more like, obstructionism on the Republicans, because I mean they flat out said, we want this to be a one-term president, and we're going to basically stand in the way of anything he wants.
And that's all
to
about supporting their own party,
exactly,
to the detriment of the country.
Yep,
it's all they care about is forwarding the fortunes of the Republican Party.
Well,
but we have Elizabeth Warren, who is doing what she can to call the corporatists on the carpet. And everyone's looking at her like she has two heads.
Like she's crazy,
because
right?
she's not supposed to be talking about that.
And look at, talk about wrong-headed policy, okay? I saw this week on Facebook, and this was put out there by a member of the Rhode Island Progressive Democrats. And I don't know if it was one of these like Credo or, Change.org or one of these like petition websites. Petition Bernie Sanders to run for president as a Democrat. I looked at that and I said, there's absolutely no way I'm signing that petition, because what makes Bernie Sanders the man that he is and the legislator that he is the fact that he's not a Democrat, that he's not a Republican, that he stands up and speaks truth to power.
Well,
and that's what makes him the senator that he is. So why would I want that guy that I have so much respect for to just up and be co-opted by this moribund, almost, petrified political party?
Well, that plus, unless you have 100 million people sign it, there's no evidence that the handful of excitable people who love Bernie Sanders are going to translate into enough voters to bring him anywhere.
I really wish I could just block Facebook petitions.
How far did Dennis
Kucinich?
Yeah, how far did he get?
Not far.
Nope.
No, and he was a pretty progressive Democrat.
Yeah, and he was derided.
He was a member of the Green Party.
Yeah,
for
and he was
a number of years.
Basically laughed at for being short and funny looking and having a hot wife.
Yeah, he was dismissed as alone. It's sort of the political version of the nuts and sluts.
Right?
Yeah. No, I guess what I want to point out.
The same is true over on the Republican side. The sane candidates got mocked because they weren't marching in lockstep.
Ron Paul.
Why does
they tried to mock Ron Paul?
Why did Fox not give Ron Paul the props that he deserved? Because he was the only one on stage that had any idea.
Right.
Well, John Huntsman was a decent candidate. Gary Johnson was a decent candidate. You had some smart, principled people up there, but because they weren't throwing red meat to the base during the debates, they were shut out.
Well, but here's the point that I really want to drive home, where I give props to a lot of folks in the Liberty movement. And again, we'd love to have you at Liberty Love Fest. At least those people now are willing to see the long term beyond the future of the Republican Party. They've essentially said, listen, we're going to be patronized every 4 years during primary season by the mainstream, Republican Party. And we're going to be dismissed, thrown out like yesterday's trash. All right. The minute the primary is over.
Wooed and screwed.
Yep. Exactly. So they basically said, you know what? To hell with this. We're going to advance our own cause. We're going nowhere with the John McCains of the world. I mean, look at the Republican Party: Bob Dole's, the John McCains, the Mitt Romneys. On and on.
Boehner, McConnell.
It's incredible.
Newt Gingrich, front runner.
Right. So. Look at what happened at CPAC.
What a just morally bankrupt.
I mean, he's got a hot wife too, though.
Chris Christie,
first, second, and third.
Right. Chris Christie got a standing ovation at
Maybe
CPAC.
There's a fourth in line here.
Right. If you truly believe Chris Christie is a conservative, you're insane or stupid or both.
We're not going to be able to have Chris Christie on the show until we get the elevator fixed. That's for sure.
Yeah, guys, you're holding us back. Okay. So at least that part of the Liberty Movement, and please, for new listeners, the Liberty Movement has nothing to do with the Tea Party. Yes, there are some people who cross the line and belong to both, but it has nothing to do with the Tea Party. The Liberty Movement is all about personal freedom, economic freedom, which incorporates a lot of the same goals of the progressive movement. At least they have had the cojones, the balls, to say, you know what, we're going to go our own way. My call is for progressive Democrats, particularly on local elections, to have that same type of courage, all right, to say, you know what, Gordon Fox, enough.
I 100% agree.
Put up an art handy. Even if you lose, at least then you make the point.
Well, if we actually had 4 parties running as opposed to 3 parties, I think people would be emboldened to vote the way they wanted to.
Well, it also, hand in hand with that, I think instant runoff elections.
Yes, absolutely.
First choice, second choice, third choice. Your first guy doesn't make it, your vote goes to the second guy.
Right.
So that's the only way we're going to get over that wasted vote syndrome.
Exactly. That's what they do. I think they do that in Australia.
Well, voting's compulsory in Australia.
That's right.
You can be fined.
You pay a hefty fine if you don't have a good excuse.
Voting.
You have to go to court.
I only think of Olivia Newton-John when I think of Australia.
See, I'm younger than you, so I'm Kylie Minogue.
I was about to say Kylie Minogue.
Yeah, okay.
Well, men at work, too, No?
Yeah, okay.
Who can it be now? That was a good tune.
Yeah, that was a good tune.
Do you think the progressive movement has got the balls to do that?
No.
Are you listening, Bob Lane?
No, I don't.
Well, how do we get instant runoff elections? Can we
change
do
the
that?
Constitution.
That's the
Can we
constitutional
do that state by
convention.
state? Can we do that state by state, or does it have to be a national thing?
I think it'd be.
I think state
one
by
of the
state
one of the
local
few
elections.
things that would actually be easier from the top down, because now you're talking about presidential elections. Okay, then you can move it to U.S. Congress. Then you can move it.
The only
down
problem,
to-
though, is none of the main candidates has any incentive to actually
Yeah,
promote
they'll all be
it
voted
because-
out.
Yeah.
Right.
Or there's at least the risk that they'll be voted
Right.
out.
And the thought of opening up a constitutional convention, either on the state or the federal basis, is just appalling.
Yeah, my friend and president of the Rhode Island Green Party, Tony Fine, has said over and over again, people think that Democrats and Republicans don't agree on anything. Well, they agree on one thing, and that is keep all the other guys out.
Right.
There'll be no movement from the mainstream people to actually incorporate any sort of emotional, financial, intellectual challenge to any of the status quo.
Yeah.
Well, it's much easier to run against one opponent than 4.
Right. Anything could happen. We could end. I mean, imagine
And
someday.
you might actually have to tell the truth,
Right.
as opposed to trying to find
on the other hand,
the superficial weaknesses of the candidate you don't like.
Something crazy like Link Chafee becoming governor could happen too.
But if we had instant runoff, it might not have happened.
Well, Tony, we'd like to.
It could have been a lot worse. We could have had that stuffed suit running as a Republican. That was painful.
Yeah, no, it's
which stuff suit are we talking about this time?
Take your pick.
Well, if any members of the progressive Democrats or other members of the Green community are listening, or you hear this on podcast later in the week, let us know. Let us know if there's anything that we can do to promote the kind of internal rebellion that's necessary. Like I said, just a few hundred feet from here, Gordon Fox sits and profits off the state, all legally, all over, all above board. Superman building at all. That's the next coming plague is a Superman building. It's like Glenn Close. That's set to rise from the bathtub any moment right now. and if that happens, will the progressives be there? Because essentially, that's their own party becoming corporatist. In the purest sense, just like 38 Studios was.
But as long as they claim that they're not becoming corporatist, that's all we care about.
Well, I think most people say corporatist. What's that? People aren't paying attention.
Right. And I think that
people have heard that the party that I habitually vote against is evil. Therefore, I should vote for the party that has the correct initial after the candidate's name,
or the party that pays my demographic the lip service that I want.
Yeah, and I'm not going to bother to read their positions if I can even, if they've even posted them, because they have the right letter after their name, and that's all I need to know.
Well,
so we need to fight that.
We want to hear from you again soon.
I'm glad to come back anytime.
We want, come back. What we'd love to talk about next is what happened to Woonsocket. Next time around.
We have the mayor's big 100-day update coming up this week. So that should be an eye-opener, to say the least.
Or not.
Well, no, I don't think people need their eyes open to the tragedy of Woonsocket. We have more businesses closing. One of the biggest buildings on Main Street may be condemned.
Really?
Yeah, the commercial block building may be condemned within the next couple of weeks.
Well, we want to hear more about that. So please don't be a stranger, and we hope you'll